It's a very warm welcome back to Matchbook's Champions League betting podcasts. Some brilliant games ahead of Matchday too. Obviously, all eyes will be on Paris on Tuesday night as PSG host Manchester City, joined this morning on this bright and sunny Monday morning by the Guardian's Jonathan Wilson. Good morning, Jonathan. How are you?
Morning, very well, thanks. How are you?
Really good. Mark O'Hare from We Love Betting also on board. Mark, you ready for Matchday too? Some enticing ties ahead this week, I would suggest.
Yeah, certainly the game we're going to talk about first was certainly the box office game of the week, the two Champions League outright favourites. So yeah, always excited to talk about some interesting matches like this.
Good stuff. Very quick recap on Matchday 1. It feels like a while ago now. We've obviously had the week off as well. Bayern 2.06, hell of a shout there. That market closed a hell of a lot shorter. Manchester City -1.5. Weird times during that game. Leipzig kept on kind of getting back into it, being pesky, but no trouble in the end. Mark, Wolfsburg plus a quarter of a goal. Led a bit of a charmed life. 50% winner there. Not totally sure how they got any bit of a result there, but hey, that's the winners. And terrific shout from Jonathan. Both teams to score in Young Boys versus Manchester United at 1.86. All right, let's get into this week. And there's only one place, as we said, that we can start, and that is Paris Saint-Germain against Manchester City in the Parc de France on Tuesday night. Let's look at the betting as we have it currently. PSG, this is a rare occurrence, an outsider at home at 3.2. Man City at 2.32. The draw available at 3.7. PSG getting a quarter of a goal start on the Asian handicap at 1.92. Manchester City on this market at 1.98. And 3 is the main total. But you might be looking at one elsewhere for that. And Jonathan, yeah, you expect this one to be a tight and potentially tetchy affair, and we're probably looking at an unders angle here.
Well, for me, yes. I mean, I'm slightly surprised that the unders is as long as it is. I guess the reason for that is we've got used to these games between the super clubs being quite high scoring, and I think we sort of all understand the reason for that, which is that they're so used to attacking domestically that they've sort of forgotten how to defend. They've only really got one way of playing because PSG. What is it? 8 wins out of 8 now in France this season. I know they had the blip last season, but they will win the French title. And so their entire mindset is about attacking. And I think particularly in the group stage, it's very hard then to switch to a more defensive approach against another big team. So we got used to these big scores. But I'm not convinced at all by PSG. I mean, we saw against Brugge in match week 1. How sluggish they were going forward. Obviously, no Messi, or probably no Messi this time round. So they've got to rejig that forward line again. So probably Neymar behind Mbappe and Icardi. I guess Draxler could come in. But also City, I think, are a little bit strange this season. I think we saw last season they were beginning to look at a way of marrying that attacking approach with something a little bit more conservative, protecting the ball a bit more. They had that iffy start of the season, the first dozen games or so in the Premier League, they weren't great. And I think that was largely, I mean, it's obviously a post-COVID thing or a post-truncated summer because of COVID thing. But also, I think they were looking to be slightly more conservative, to keep 5 men behind the ball as far as possible. And it did work last season, right up until the final. Then if you look at their away games this season, they lost 1-0 at Spurs. They won 1-0 at Leicester, then they won 1-0, and I thought brilliant on Saturday against Chelsea. But these are low-scoring games. You saw the game against Southampton. They weren't the very, very fluent City we've been used to. Now, obviously, at the same time this season, there have been games when they've 2 games where they've scored 5, 2 games when they've scored 6. But I suspect this will be a cagey, more cautious game. And given that I don't trust PSG's, I don't trust PSG, full stop. But given I don't think they have much fluidity. I think there probably is value there in backing the unders.
Yeah, and Mark O'Hare, we're looking at the goal line has actually gone up in this, which is quite surprising in my opinion. So I think we were looking last night, it was under 2.5. The main line now is 3. Under 2.5, you come back to 2.38. Under 3 at 1.86, which gives us a bit of security. And Mark, we saw it on Saturday. Jonathan touched on it there. When these big sides do meet, there tends to be this kind of tactical kind of defensiveness and no going home. Are you expecting something similar in Paris?
Yeah, I wouldn't be backing the overs at that line for sure. But I think this is a massive match at PSG. Forget what's happening domestically. What happened in their first match day against Bruges? And certainly the way the French press have treated Pochettino over the past 12 months or so, he hasn't won them over, and he's under fierce scrutiny to try and find a winning formula with his superstar players, particularly in the final third. And early signs to me suggest he's still trying to find that formula. You look at the midfield that played at the weekend against Montpellier, Paredes, Herrera, Gay, Di Maria almost basically playing the link role. There's no Verratti, or he's at least a major doubt as well with Messi. So I wonder how or where that supply line is going to come for those superstars in the forward areas, and it almost becomes down to Mbappe to conjure up something from nothing for PSG. And I think, Pochettino needs to work out whether he's going to sacrifice some of that sort of workhorse midfield fortitude for a bit more kind of going forward. And I think that's potentially quite hazardous against a team like Man City, particularly after the performance we saw at Stamford Bridge, which I would say was one of the best performances in a Premier League match of that magnitude for quite some time. They were absolutely stunning, not just with the ball, but without the ball. The way they absolutely just suffocated Chelsea, only had 5 shots, 0 shots on target, and City forced 13 corners in the game. So, De Bruyne wasn't anywhere near his best either. So if City can kind of match anywhere close to those standards, I find it very difficult to see PSG winning this match in their current guise. I think maybe in a couple of months' time, I think it's wrong to be writing PSG off as potential challengers for the Champions League based on what we've seen so far. And there's a lot can change in a football season from September to March, for example. But right now, City are so far ahead in terms of their development compared to where PSG are or want to be. So I'm happy to side with City in the draw no bet market, or +0 on the Asian handicap here. They were 2.2 when they went to Paris last season without fans and without Messi. But if Messi is going to be missing, they're what, 2.3-ish now. And as I say, I think in terms of development, they're the better team right now. So they'll be happy to take a point back to Manchester for sure. This is a huge match for PSG because if they don't win the group, they could easily face another Premier League team in the last 16, or Bayern Munich, of course. City don't have to worry about meeting another Premier League team in the last 16. So I think they'll be a bit more carefree than PSG, but I also think they're the better team. So happy to side with them at the prices. 1.75, I think, +0.
Yeah, I think it's about 1.72, 1.73, but there's a small bit of margin in that, Mark, so I'll happily give you the 1.75 there as we're recording on Monday morning. Jonathan, I think the under 3 angle here is probably the best one in terms of the under. I know you were looking at 2.5, but look, obviously, if it does end up in a 2-1 win or 3-0 win, we get our money back anyway. So I think 1.86 there for under 3, and Mark's bet is City draw no bet, which appears inside of matchbook.com at 0.0. I think they're fairly solid bets, guys. I make a suggestion. I don't see a goal fest here either. Sorry, John, do you want to come back?
Well, just the other point is Pochettino's record against Guardiola is pretty poor. Met 20 times, Pochettino's only won 3. Now, obviously, that's skewed slightly by, I don't know, roughly half of those games being when he was at Espanyol against Barcelona. But his record with Tottenham against City was not great, with obviously the one exception of the 2019 quarter-final, which was a pretty freakish game. So I don't have a sort of sense that, in the way you have a sense that Tuchel knows how to beat Guardiola, or the Klopp knows how to beat Guardiola, which doesn't mean they'll do it every game, but that they at least have a conception of how you do it. I don't get that sense of Pochettino at all, albeit he's always had the weaker side.
Yeah, it's definitely a factor. Definitely when there's a big enough of a sample size. All right, Juventus Chelsea. Mark, start with you first for this one. This is an interesting game on Wednesday night in Turin. Juve 4.4. You can back Chelsea at 2.0. The draw available 3.5, and Juve getting a half goal start in the Asian handicap, which keeps the draw inside at 1.92, and 2.25 is the total. Yes, Juve started with this 3-0 win over Malmo, and yes, they won at the weekend, but I wonder, with Allegri back in there, Mark, it's still not kind of, it doesn't, from my eye anyway, seem to be clicking. Are Chelsea a bit of value here, just under even money?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. Basically, Juventus are, I think, I don't know this for certain, but I think they're basically going off at the biggest price they've ever been in Turin in the Champions League, certainly in recent memory, which is quite a shock to the system, really. But yeah, I expected Juventus to be a lot better than they have been under Max Allegri. Probably had high expectations of him coming straight in and changing things up. But 2 wins from the first 6 games in Serie A, sloppy wins as well against Spezia and Sampdoria, no clean sheets, conceding multiple goals in 4 of those matches. Apart from the Malmo game, they haven't looked the Juventus of old, or at least Allegri's previous time. And that comes in squad depth as well. You look at the proposed 11 who might play this midweek. It's a shadow of the team that played under him during his last reign, and that's fair enough. But there's been an issue with Juve now for, going back to the end of last season. It's 20 domestic games without a clean sheet, which is a pretty shocking stat for a club of Juventus' stature. Certainly with my own eyes, I've been unimpressed by them, particularly in defeat against Napoli. Thought they were, bang average in a tight affair against Milan. But yeah, the underlying numbers normally will paint a more positive picture, but actually they're quite a long way off what the rest of the leading lights in Italy are doing so far domestically too. So yeah, I think they're fragile. I think they're vulnerable. There's no Dybala, no Morata. Allegri's ruled them out after the weekend's injuries. I think Rabiot's missing as well. So I mentioned that sort of proposed 11. Compare it to what with Chelsea can field, and yeah, it's no real match, is it? And Chelsea, ordinarily, I'd sort of just take this off as a Chelsea win at even money and move on. But I probably have to say that since the international break, they haven't been the Chelsea we've come to expect under Thomas Tuchel. The 3-0 against Villa wasn't reflective of the match. The Zenit game, they were very uninspiring. The first 45 minutes against Spurs was pretty average, and then they turned it on. And then at the weekend, where Tuchel, I think hands up, probably didn't get the tactical side of things over Pep for the first time in 3. So yeah, it's an opportunity for them to bounce back, and I do expect them to go and get a result in Turin. I just think at evens, it's just on a little bit on the short side. So I think the easy way to kind of get around here is just add in under 3.5 goals, which is something we've done quite consistently now with Chelsea under Tuchel. 35 of his 37 games across all competitions have featured fewer than 4 goals. So it's just a nice way of boosting that price from even money to around 2.5, 2.4. I'm not sure what the actual price is right now. It will be around 2.4-ish, I suspect. Yep. But it's just a nice way of marrying the two trends together, especially when you kind of look at the correct score favourites in that market. It'll be 1-0, 2-0, 2-1, or 3-0 Chelsea. I can't see this game being a kind of 3-2, 4-3 kind of game.
Yeah, it's a popular bet on our weekend pod, Chelsea, and under 3.5. Jonathan, what do you make of Chelsea? Obviously, we don't want to get too wrapped up in recency bias. That was a terrific Manchester City performance. But he'll surely, Tuchel, that is, go back to a 3-4-3, bring back in Havertz, Ziyech, and maybe leave Timo Werner on the bench for this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was a specific tactic for that game. He wanted Werner's pace to get in behind City's back four. I think they really missed Mason Mount on Saturday, and the likelihood is he'll be out again. So that is a problem. And I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right about the 3-4-3, because if you assume Allegri's going to play the 4-4-2 that he has done all the way through this season, then particularly without Rabiot, who you could see sort of tucking in on the left of the 4 and giving him an extra central midfielder, Chelsea then overmanning 3v2 at the back, or potentially even 4v2 in the middle of midfield. It's very hard to see how Juve get out of that. And then it's just a question of whether they can pick holes in that back 4. But you would assume that with the range of options you have with Lukaku, with Havertz, and whoever the other more creative midfielder is, if Mount isn't available, that they would be able to do that at some point.
In terms of a bet, Jonathan, Chelsea even money here at the moment at Matchbook.com. Are they the value in for you?
Well, I completely take Mark's point that I can't see it being more than, it just makes, I would repeat exactly what he's just said. So I would like to revise what I had said earlier and add in that under 3.5 goals as well.
Yeah, it should be about 2.5 at Matchbook.com. Chelsea to win under 3.5 goals. And Mark, it's a pretty solid case for that one. I mean, the sample size is big and the success rate is also big. And
and the other point is that Juve will probably end up playing Kulusevski and Moise Kean up front, which does not sound like a Juve front two, right? I mean, and actually, this really is the Ronaldo hangover. This is the problem of spending 100 million euros on Ronaldo, giving him €500,000 a week, that you then can't develop the rest of the squad, and you end up in a problem like this, even when you've got rid of that big drain on resources.
All right, Chelsea 2.0 in the match odds, but we're going to just juice it up a small bit and take Chelsea to win and under 3.5 goals. Should be about 2.5 at Matchbook.com. Your choice, Jonathan, in this next game is Manchester United against Villarreal. Let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently at Matchbook.com. United, fresh from that 1-0 win, or 1-0 loss at home to Aston Villa, even 1.51. Villarreal at 7.0, draw available at 4.6. Villarreal getting a goal start on the Asian handicap at 2.1. You can back United at 1.83 and 2.75 is the total, slightly shaded towards the over. Of course, a repeat of last year's Europa League final, Jonathan. But I think we've talked about Manchester United ad nauseum. The last time we obviously fancied that young boys would score. What of this one though? Do you think Villarreal could potentially get in the score sheet at Old Trafford on Tuesday night? What do you think?
Yeah, because I just don't trust. I mean, again, we're just repeating things we said last time, but I just don't trust United's defence. I don't trust their midfield. Yeah. Maguire's now a doubt, which obviously creates even bigger problems. There is an issue of how much do I trust Villarreal, having drawn 7 of 8 games so far this season. Yeah, how much firepower do they have, especially if Moreno's out? But I just, every game I've seen United, the Newcastle game, the Wolves game, they've looked incredibly vulnerable. And they just look like a team who could concede at any moment to a team who breaks against them. I think Ronaldo will score 20, 25 goals this season if he stays fit, but he creates a huge number of problems in a midfield that was already weak. You then have a problem of, do you play Pogba deep? Do you play him wide on the left? Do you play McTominay and Fred, which still doesn't feel like a top class holding midfield pair. So I think they've got big problems there. I think we saw Emery has the. I mean, it's a kind of obvious thing to say, but he clearly is capable of getting results against big teams. Saw that again at the weekend against Real Madrid. We saw it in that Europa League final. There's 2 other doubts, I guess, about Villarreal, and this is why I still think United will win. And that is Foyt being out. I think he's a big loss for their back four, and also Coquelin. They do lose a bit of solidity in midfield if he's not there. So it's not entirely different to the young boys bet that I see both teams scoring, but I do think at Old Trafford United should be able to win.
Big price this one, 3.2 Manchester United to win and both teams to score. So obviously we're. Villarreal aren't expected to score, and hence why you're getting the better price there. Mark, what do you make of Villarreal in this one? Jonathan touched on it. It's been kind of a bit of a sluggish start this season, but can they give United a game here?
Yeah, I think they can. Just because of all the reasons Jonathan mentioned, United's defence is rickety and fragile, and I think Villarreal do have the ability to break and hurt them. Certainly, if you see what Premier League teams have done to United as well as young boys, there's encouragement there for them. They are draw specialists under Unai Emery. They were last season. They are again this time around. I thought they played really well against Atalanta in a tricky game on match day 1. Possibly deserved more than the draw in that game. They've been to the Bernabeu and picked up a 0-0, possibly with a better team at the weekend. They drew 2-2 away at Atlético Madrid, where they were actually second best in that match, but scraped a point. And I think when you look in the dugout, I probably have more faith in Unai Emery sort of putting together a tactical game plan to pick something up from this match than Ole Gunnar Solskjaer at the moment. And I do think they've got ability in the final third. I do think they can be organised and difficult to play through. They'll be under no illusions how big this game is going away to Old Trafford. It's a tricky group they're in, so they'll be more than happy to pick up a point and move on. So I don't expect them to be sort of cavalier or headless in their approach. And I think that could, in theory, cause United a few problems, because Villa defended very stoutly at the weekend, deserved, I thought, a 1-0 win. I thought they created a few of the bigger opportunities in the match. United were pretty uninspiring for the most part, and Villa just had to play in transitions and counterattacks, and it worked well for them. I know it's a bit of a running joke that we never seem to get Man United right on this podcast, or at the weekend at least, but when you write them off, they produced performances against Man City and PSG in the past 2 years, which kind of live long in the memory. But then they also produced some really embarrassing efforts, like Başakşehir, Young Boys, even Leipzig last season was a bit of a joke. So I can't be trusting United at that price. They went off around 1.91 at neutral venue in the Europa League final. The game obviously ended in a draw. They didn't do anything that night. Solskjaer was criticised again for his lack of substitutions on that occasion. So a jump from about 1.91 to 1.51 at Old Trafford with fans, probably just a bit too much for me. I'll probably make United a bit closer to 1.6 than the 1.5 they are at the moment. And for that reason, I'm happy to oppose them. So how do we sort of go about this? I've ended up just plumping for Villarreal plus 1.25 because we basically make money if United don't win by 2 or more goals. And I think that's probably my happiest kind of medium here, because it's a tricky game to call. I think United's firepower, they could easily score 4 or 5 goals here. We know that we've talked about it every week, but at the moment it's not quite clicking for him, Solskjaer at the moment. So yeah, happy to sort of oppose a big home win.
Yeah, kind of different ways in there. Jonathan's selection, United to win and both teams to score 3.2. And Mark, of course, unless Villarreal lose by 2 goals or more, will make money at 1.77 on Villarreal plus 1.25. Let's just take a very quick break just to tell folks about the sign-up offer available on matchbook.com, which isn't that banner, but it is another banner. But it's bet 10, get 15. And it's a pretty decent offer indeed. If you use the bonus code INSIGHTS15 when you're signing up, you get that 15 quid free bet after you place a 10 quid bet. Check out insights.matchbook.com for full terms and conditions of that offer, and also insights.matchbook.com for a full recap of the lads' selections about 2 or 3 hours post recording. All right, Mark, your game of choice next is AC Milan against Atletico Madrid. And let's take a look at the betting as we have it currently on matchbook.com. Come back Milan here, first time in Champions League in a good few years at the Giuseppe Meazza 3.0, Atletico 2.64, the draw available 3.3. The draw no bet market is the main handicap line currently at matchbook.com, which appears on the site at 0.0. And obviously Milan are underdogs there, 2.08 and 2.25 is the total. Mark, talk to me about this one. I mean, obviously Milan went to Anfield and probably surprised a lot of people with that, especially at the end of the first half performance. Are they a bit of value here in this one, or are we going to the well with Atletico?
No, I can't trust Atletico at all at the moment. Really interesting game this, though, with Liverpool in the pool, as well as Porto. Effectively, I think the 3 teams outside of Liverpool are playing for the second qualification place. And I think that, in turn, kind of just makes this quite a tight, quite a tentative and quite possibly a cautious affair at San Siro. Milan have been quite impressive in Serie A. They tend to start the season really quite strongly under Pioli. I'm not sure what he does pre-season, but it tends to work for them. Defensively, they've looked pretty strong as well. Held Juventus in Turin pretty comfortably. Beat Lazio comprehensively at San Siro as well. And as you say, that game against Liverpool at Anfield, they were all right actually, competitive, even if they did fall away in the second half. The squad is stronger than it was when it went to Anfield this time around, so they should be stronger. But you look at Atletico, things aren't working right now. They trailed in the 4th minute away at Alaves at the weekend, rock bottom Alaves, and they managed just 0.8 XG, 1 shot on target and 6 shots in the box, chasing a game, like desperately poor figures. They fell behind against Getafe last midweek. They won the match, but the figures were really poor. Watching it as well with the eyes, just quite unimpressive stuff. And similar occurred at Espanyol. They got out of jail. Look at the home games: 0-0 against Porto, 0-0 against Athletic, scraped past Elche 1-0 earlier in the season. And the key theme of all these matches are they're struggling to create big chances and struggling to open teams up. And they're relying on individual brilliance to conjure something up. So defensively, I don't think they're doing a huge amount wrong. There's been a few key errors with Oblak, making one against Getafe, a few set-piece goals conceded as well, which is kind of unlike them. But most of all, majority of the matches, they've been pretty assured defensively and pretty well organised, as they normally are under Simeone. So, yeah, I just think the significance of this match, Matchday 2, the way in which the first Matchday ended as well for these teams, it's almost like a must not lose attitude, I think both have taken. I could easily see the team winning this 1-0, but backing under 2.5 goals, we get a 1-0 for either side on side. We've got the 2-0 for either team on side, as well as the 0-0 and the 1-1 draw, which is 5 of the top 7 in the correct score market. So, yeah, that was my approach. I think if you can ever get unders in our Atleti game away from home in the Champions League at 1.75 or above, I think it's a bet. So, yeah, it's almost a blind bet for me, this one. But, yeah, I can't back Atleti right now at all.
Yeah, Atletico back being unders backers favourites, even in spite of their attacking prowess. Jonathan, what do you make of this one? Do you fancy Milan here for a home win?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I think I would have done anyway, but the fact that they're longer than Atletico seems bizarre to me, given how poor Atletico have been this season. I think even the fact, I mean, it's one of those things very hard to quantify, but the fact that it is the first Champions League game at San Siro in 7 years, and actually the last game there was also against Atleti when Milan lost 1-0 in the last 16 in 2013-14. You assume that the atmosphere will be very, very good, everybody will be up for it. Whether that makes a difference or not, I don't know. But you can sort of see if Milan start well, that you could get that sort of tide of momentum. But fundamentally, Atletico, Griezmann hasn't looked right. I think they have a tendency to start seasons poorly and then sort of build into the season, and they're still clearly in that development phase. So, Milan have started well. Atletico haven't. Milan at home. I like the idea of them draw no bet.
Yeah, draw no bet currently available odds against 2.08. I think that's a very good strategy there, because it could generally be a 0-0 draw here or 1-1, so you get your money back. All right. That's the main slate finished with, gentlemen. Mark, other bets. You're looking at Atalanta and over 2.5 against Young Boys. Odds against Matchday.com currently 2.05.
Yeah, expecting this one to be quite good fun. We know all about Atalanta and their philosophy under Gianpiero Gasperini. I don't think they've really clicked so far this season until the weekend away at Inter. The game ended 2-2, but just another wonderful game from Italy. Atalanta playing some really refreshing, forward-thinking football, as they always tend to do, and scoring goals and looking good again. Malinowski in particular. But on Matchday 1, they drew 2-2 with Villarreal as well. Another eventful game, entertainment. And 5 of their first 7 now across all competitions have gone overs. So immediately drawn to goals because Young Boys aren't accustomed to kind of sitting back and soaking up pressure and playing on the break. They do like to play their own brand of attacking football. A slight concern that David Wagner in his time with Huddersfield and in the second half of his spell with Schalke probably did go a little bit pragmatic. So there are concerns, but I don't think that's the way in which you kind of play against Atalanta. I think they almost draw you into playing an end-to-end game anyhow. And look, it is Young Boys' nature to be adventurous. But defensively, they're just not good enough to kind of keep Atalanta out. And their season started in July. They played 16 games across all competitions. They've been favourites in 15 of those, and the vast majority they've been at least 1.6 or shorter. So strong favourites. They've only kept 3 clean sheets in those 16 games, just 1 in the last 12. Ferencváros scored twice in both legs in the qualifiers against Young Boys. United probably could and should have scored more than 1 goal in the first half before Wan-Bissaka's red card tilted the balance in Young Boys' favour. Atalanta, we just know about their proficiency in the final third. So the market is expecting 3.25 goals here. It's got Atalanta in for 2.2 of those. I don't necessarily disagree with that too much, but I just think there's enough there in terms of what the market is expecting and the prices to kind of add in over 2.5 goals, because they're trading at 1.5. We're getting a boost to 2.05. I wouldn't be too surprised at all if Young Boys managed to get on the score sheet, but also if Atalanta covered this line themselves. So I'm expecting Atalanta to be reasonably comfortable in quite an enjoyable match.
All right, 2.05 currently matchbook.com for that one. Jonathan, Bruges, obviously terrific result, match day 1 against PSG. You like them here at plus 1.25 away at Leipzig at 1.85. Now, we've touched on Leipzig in match day 1, but you're not buying into that 6-0 win at Hertha over the weekend. that doesn't change your mind on March.
Well, it's sown a seed of doubt. But I mean, their results have just been all over the place this season. The 6-3 at City came out. There's no way I expected them to score 3 that day. I did quite expect them to concede 6. So there's a chaos about Leipzig that's very difficult to quantify. There's a weird chaos about Club Brugge as well, that they've been immensely impressive this season, apart from when they went to Ghent and let in 6 against a team who are, I don't know, lower mid-table. I'm not sure exactly where, but they're certainly not in the top half in Belgium. And I've got no idea what went wrong for them that day, but they just, once they started conceding goals, just couldn't stop. They didn't have anybody sent off, they didn't have anybody injured. There was none of the usual reasons for a bizarre result. So there is a slight element of anything could happen here. But yeah, fundamentally, I saw Club Brugge when they drew 2-2 against Real Madrid 2 seasons ago and thought they were really impressive. And so I've sort of been keeping half an eye on them since. They haven't really lost many players since then. Last season, I thought they were pretty unlucky in the group stage. Beat Zenit twice, including, so they got the win away from home. They drew away against Lazio as well. So I think they're better than a lot of Belgian teams we've seen recently in the Champions League. And they just look very long, given how unpredictable Leipzig are, and given how they have those huge defensive problems that I just don't trust. Klosterman and Orban, assuming that is the 2 centre backs. It could be Simakan, I guess. So Yeah, this is based in, I think Brugge are better than people think, and I don't trust Leipzig at all, and therefore that long price attracts me. So yeah, plus 1.25, it seems reasonable at the price.
Yeah, you only lose money again if Leipzig actually win by 2 goals or more. And if you wanted to be a bit more aggressive, Brugge are 6.8, just under 6-1 at Matchbook.com currently. So yeah, might be one to be looking at. Although you had a big price in the match they won with Kiev, so I think you might be a bit more conservative this time. They should have won that game, but I think that's not a bad angle to be looking at.
I mean, fundamentally, I was right there. Football was wrong.
You were. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's gotcha. All right. Just before we get to Matchday 2 best bets, if you are watching this podcast today live on YouTube or even watching it back in replay, if you are enjoying the content, please give us a thumbs up and click the subscribe button. It does help with our algorithms. And if you're listening to us on the podcast, please leave us a review, preferential one, preferably, of course, but give us your feedback either ways. Marco here, best bet of Matchday 2 for you. What is it, man?
I'm taking a double, an under 3.5 goals double. We've already talked about Milan against Atletico. I'd be surprised if that game descends into a shootout, considering what's at stake in that group. Neither team won on Matchday 1, and I think there's a necessity now that both just need to get points on the board with Porto playing Liverpool. So I don't think either team would be hugely dissatisfied with a draw. So I think unders and the draw are a runner there. I think if you just budget up to under 3.5, obviously forms the first part of a nice treble, a double, don't know what I'm talking about. Yeah. With Wolfsburg against Sevilla, I think both teams are reasonably pragmatic by nature. Both are probably their strengths are in defensive areas. Wolfsburg, embarrassing really, a Matchday 1 against Lille, abysmal showing. Don't know how they scraped a draw in that, but Sevilla dropped points against Salzburg as well. So, I don't think either team by nature like to open up and play sort of free-flowing attacking football. So just combine the two and you get a 1.81 shot on under 3.5 goals.
Yeah, if there's 4 goals in Wolfsburg Sevilla, I will give up. There is no 2 ways about that. Just looking at those teams, that just screams unders. John to Wilson, your best bet for Matchday 2?
That PSG City game, under 3. Nice. I just think people are remembering the wrong games here. I think PSG, especially having drawn that first game, they can't afford to get hammered here. So I think they'll be cautious. I think City now have become a team who are comfortable being cautious. I think you've also got to look at the fact that for City, this is the second one of 3 really tough games.
Yeah.
Chelsea last weekend, Liverpool next weekend. And so I can see a situation where it's sort of 1-1 with 20 minutes to go. And for them, it's completely in both teams' interest then, kill the game, move on. There's going to be no incentive for either side there to. I mean, you can see City might think, if we can win this, we could maybe eliminate PSG. What are they, favourites, second favourites to win the thing? But in the context of this week, I think that impetus will be less. So, I like the idea of getting money if there's 2 goals or fewer, and getting my money back if it's 3. So yeah, PSG City under 3 goals.
Could be a hell of a lot of shadow boxing in that game for sure. All right, we are off until the 18th of October. Bit of a break, guys. International break thrown in there as well, just for good measure. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for listening today. And thanks to Jonathan and Mark as ever. Some good bets there. If you're looking for a recap of those, obviously we've kind of rattled through a fair few. Insights.matchbook.com, Monday afternoon onwards, you will get a full recap of those best of luck with your Matchday 2 bets until the 18th of October. Bye for now.